What happens when one neighbor decides your driveway is actually her personal parking spot? When cupcakes become a national emergency? When iced coffee and entitlement join forces under one roof? Meet Karen Reynolds, the suburban queen of chaos. What started as a quick park spiraled into full-blown warfare involving a 78-year-old grandma, a zoning department email, a security camera, and yes, a tow truck named Mitch. This isn't just another neighbor dispute. This is driveway drama turned courtroom-worthy, HOA style. From passive-aggressive sticky notes to viral TikToks, trash bag retaliation, and a final chalk message that left the entire block cheering, you won't believe how far Karen went, or how gloriously it all came crashing down. If you've ever had a neighbor from hell, or just love watching karma unfold in the most petty, satisfying ways, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to follow more outrageous true tales from the neighborhood battlegrounds, only on Real HOA Drama. Because around here, the fences may be white, but the drama is never clean. You know that feeling when life is finally peaceful? Like the world isn't out to get you for once? That was me, Michael Anderson, in our sleepy little suburban neighborhood, where the loudest sound most days was the wind tickling the wind chimes on Martha's porch. My wife, Lena, loved the garden. I loved the peace. And my 78-year-old mom, Martha, who visited every week, loved one thing above all: being able to park in the dang driveway without climbing Mount Sidewalk. Our driveway wasn't fancy, but it was ours. Paid for, paved, sealed, and the sacred landing spot for Mom's tan Buick and our little Prius. The slight slope made it easier for Martha to get to the front door without tripping over the uneven sidewalk that City Hall promised to fix 3 years ago. Everything was calm, until she showed up. Karen Reynolds. The name still makes my eyelid twitch. Technically, she lived across the street, but boundaries were never her strong suit. You could spot her from 3 blocks away, mid-40s, blonde bob that looked like it lost a battle with dry shampoo, and always clutching an oversized iced coffee, like it was a lifeline to her personality. Lululemon leggings? Every day.
Yoga mat.
Nowhere in sight. You get the picture. The first incident happened on a breezy Thursday. I came home from a grocery run, arms loaded with eggs, organic kale, Lena's idea, and some sinful chocolate bars I planned to hide behind the frozen peas. And there it was. A big, white SUV, angled ever so casually in my driveway, like it had paid rent. I stared at it for a moment. Maybe someone visiting? A delivery? Maybe Karen just parked for a second?
Nope.
I set the bags down, rang her doorbell, and waited. She opened the door with that perfectly curated look of fake surprise. "Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry," she cooed, flipping her hair. "I was just running in to grab something real quick."
Right.
Real quick must have included enough time for her engine to cool and her windshield to collect a fine dust of pollen. I smiled, tight-lipped, but polite. "If you don't mind moving it, my mom's visiting this afternoon. She's not great with the curb." Karen nodded, apologizing again, this time with even less sincerity. Her smile was that practiced kind, like the kind cashiers give to coupon hoarders right before closing. She shuffled to her car and pulled it out like she was doing me a favor. I waved, thanked her, and assumed that was the end of it. Rookie move. See, in most places, people understand that driveways are not public property, no matter how empty they might look for 10 minutes. But Karen had the audacity of a cat walking across your laptop, confident, clueless, and completely convinced it's doing nothing wrong. That night, I laughed about it with Lena over dinner. "Maybe she's new," I said. "Maybe it was just a one-off." Martha chuckled from the couch. "Just wait. Entitled people don't retire. They multiply." I should have listened to Mom, because that moment, her SUV in my driveway, wasn't an accident. It was the prologue to the suburban saga I never asked for. A tale of turf wars, iced coffee, and one neighbor's burning desire to treat my home like her personal parking lot. And so it began. They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. By that logic, Karen Reynolds was absolutely unhinged, and I, apparently, was optimistic to the point of delusion. A few days after the first SUV invasion, I came home from work, briefcase in one hand, cold brew in the other, and there it was. The white whale. Karen's oversized SUV, once again lounging in my driveway like it was on a beach vacation. This time, I didn't even ring the doorbell. I texted her. "Hey Karen, your car's in my driveway again. Mind moving it?" 2 minutes later, she popped her head out the door and waved like we were old college buddies meeting for brunch.
Oh,
"I'll just be a second. I was only grabbing some kale chips and forgot I parked there."
kale chips.
I should have known. Nothing good ever starts with kale. I bit my tongue. Again.
But then it happened again. And again.
On the third offense, her tone shifted from innocent to irritated, as if I were the inconvenience. "Seriously, Michael," she said, sunglasses perched like a tiara on her head, "it's not like you're using it all the time. It's just easier for me when I'm unloading groceries." Groceries, huh? From what I could tell, the heaviest lifting she did all week was carrying that emotional support iced coffee. Lena, bless her, tried to keep the peace. But by incident number 4, even her patience wore thin. "She parked there again?" Lena huffed, peeking out through the blinds like we were in a budget spy movie. That woman's one reusable tote bag away from parking inside our living room. I sighed. "I'll go talk to her." "No," Lena said, crossing her arms. "You need to start writing this crap down. Seriously." And that's how it began. The Driveway Diaries. An old leather notebook that used to track my workouts, was now repurposed into a logbook of entitlement. September 12th, 5:42 p.m., Karen Parks. Leaves after 17 minutes. "Excuse. Just a sec, I was FaceTiming my niece." September 14th, 3:27 p.m., Karen again. Leaves Trader Joe's bag in back seat for 45 minutes. "Excuse. I was going to move it, but then got a call from my Reiki coach." September 17th, 6:11 p.m., double parked. Again. No excuse given. Just a shrug. I even started snapping pictures. Not for revenge. Not yet. But because deep down I knew something was coming. You don't keep getting poked by a bee and not expect a sting. Karen had gone from harmlessly clueless to aggressively entitled. She no longer knocked, no longer waved, and certainly no longer apologized. Now she just assumed the spot was hers when it was convenient. It was like dealing with a raccoon in designer sunglasses, cunning, sneaky, and convinced the trash can was a buffet. And while I still tried to play the calm, rational neighbor, a storm was brewing. Not just in me, but in the house. Lena started leaving sticky notes that said things like, "Private property is not equal to community parking lot." And once, on a particularly passive-aggressive day, "Next time, we charge valet." Even my mom, Martha, chimed in after spotting the SUV one afternoon. "She parks there again. I'm keying move into her hood with my cane." Was she joking?
Probably.
But at this rate, I wasn't going to test it. So I kept recording. Kept tracking. Because Karen thought I was just a doormat with a clipboard. But what she didn't know, what she would soon learn the hard way, was that some driveways have limits. And mine was about to hit maximum capacity. It was a Saturday morning that started like any other. Sunshine, birdsong, and the smell of overcooked bacon because Lena insists on crispy or nothing. My mom, Martha, was coming over for brunch, a tradition that involved mimosas, crossword puzzles, and her lovingly critiquing Lena's plant choices. "Why is this one drooping? Looks like it needs therapy." I had cleared the driveway just for her. No cars.
No trascans. No obstacles.
Because at 78, Martha didn't exactly bounce up curbs like a gymnast anymore. She needed a smooth, safe path to the front door, something I took seriously. Then came the sound. You know that low rumble of a smug SUV engine? The kind that announces itself like, "Make way, I'm more important than you." I looked out the window and felt my stomach drop. There it was, Karen's white SUV, parked not just in the driveway, but behind Mom's car, which she had just barely finished parallel parking into the space. blocking her in, like a steel wall of entitled suburban madness. A second later, I heard it. "Michael," my mom's voice bellowed from outside. "Who the hell is this woman?" I rushed out to find Karen standing next to her car, hands on hips, sunglasses perched like she thought she was running a fashion blog called Audacity Monthly. "She needs to move," my mom snapped, glaring up at her. "I have arthritis, not a teleportation device." Karen didn't flinch. In fact, she had the nerve, the actual gall, to smile. "I just need 5 minutes," she said, brushing past us like we were mannequins in her imaginary boutique. "I have to grab cupcakes for my daughter's soccer team. It's an emergency." I blinked. "An emergency cupcakes?" Karen huffed, exasperated that I didn't immediately understand the gravity of the situation. "They're gluten-free," she added, like that made it life or death. Mom looked at me like she was about to commit a felony with her purse. "Move the car," I said, calm but firm. Karen rolled her eyes so dramatically, I thought they might get stuck. "You're being so dramatic." I said 5 minutes. 5 minutes turned into 10, then 15. I stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching her stroll back and forth from her house like she was curating a cupcake art installation. My mom sat in her car, fuming, muttering under her breath in a way that made me glad Karen couldn't hear her. Pretty sure one of the words was buffoon. And that was it. That was my tipping point. The cupcakes weren't the issue. The issue was that Karen thought she owned space that wasn't hers. The issue was that she didn't care about my mom, my home, or the fact that I had asked politely multiple times. She had tested me one too many times. And now, it was time I tested her back. No more Mr. Nice Neighbor. No more sticky notes or awkward doorbell conversations. No more hoping she'd get the hint. If she wanted to park in my driveway, then she was about to learn exactly what that would cost her. Because there's something Karen didn't realize. When you block in a little old lady on a Saturday morning, you don't just mess with brunch. You declare war. There's a moment in every neighborhood feud when things go from mildly annoying to full-on DEFCON 3. For me, that moment came shortly after the cupcake calamity, aka when Karen blocked in my elderly mother because of a gluten-free soccer emergency. That was the line. The bridge was burned. The cupcake was the last straw. So, I did what any reasonable, slightly unhinged suburban man would do. I launched Operation Document and Dominate. First order of business? Eyes in the sky. Or, well, the soffit. I drove straight to the local hardware store and picked up a motion-activated security camera. Nothing fancy, just something simple, reliable, and capable of capturing every single square inch of my driveway and any SUVs that dared trespass upon it like they were contestants on America's Next Top Entitled Neighbor. I spent the whole afternoon installing it, adjusting the angle, testing the motion detection, and syncing it to my phone. By the end, I could see more angles of my driveway than the Pentagon had on Area 51. Lena peeked outside and raised a brow. "Security camera?" "Yup. Romantic." I handed her a screwdriver. True love is shared surveillance. Phase 1, complete. Phase 2, confirming what I already knew in my soul. This was my property.
Mine.
Not Karen's, not the community's, not an urban parking co-op. Mine. I emailed the city zoning office with a polite but very pointed question. "Hi there. Could you please confirm whether the driveway on my property is considered private or part of a public easement? Thanks in advance." To my delight, and probably the zoning officer's complete lack of surprise, I received a response within 48 hours. "Your driveway is entirely located on your private property and is not designated as part of any public easement. You have the legal right to control access to it."
Bingo.
I printed it. I screenshotted it. I framed it in my heart. Now armed with proof, footage, and a slow-burning thirst for justice, I waited. And wouldn't you know it? Karen didn't disappoint. 3 days later, I came home to, guess what? Her SUV nestled in my driveway like it belonged on the title deed. Again. I didn't even bother knocking this time. I waited until I saw her emerge, coffee in hand, looking as obliviously confident as ever. I walked over calmly and said, "Hey Karen, mind moving your car again?" She gave me that half smile, half sneer she'd perfected. "Michael, I already told you, it's not really your driveway. It's part of the easement." I blinked. "Karen, the easement is the patch of grass between the sidewalk and the curb. My driveway is 20 feet into my lot line. It's private property." "That's your opinion," she shot back, waving her iced vanilla nonsense like a legal brief. I pulled out my phone and opened the zoning department's email, already saved as a favorite. I scrolled down and held it up like it was the Constitution. "Nope. That's the city's opinion. Would you like me to forward it to you?" For the first time ever, I saw it, the flicker. The Karen glitch. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Just an eye twitch and a tiny gasp of disbelief. She turned on her heel and stormed back to her house, mumbling something about ridiculous neighbors and their made-up rules. Meanwhile, I waved cheerfully and said, "Have a great day." It was official. Karen had been served. Not by law. Not yet.
But by fax.
And by video. And by the growing realization that this wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. Because Operation Document and Dominate? Oh, honey. That was just getting started. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but in suburbia, it's even better when it's served in the form of a perfectly timed parking trap with a side of passive-aggressive sticky notes and legal documentation. It was a Thursday afternoon. I'd just gotten back from the grocery store. Again. How do we go through so many bananas? When I turned the corner and saw it, Karen's white SUV, lounging in my driveway like it had a mortgage and a family for living inside. But this time it was different. This time, there was no Karen in sight. No flippy hair. No exaggerated size. No iced coffee posing as a personality. Just the SUV, sitting there in all its illegally parked glory. I paused for a moment, hands on hips, breathing in the opportunity. This was it. This was my moment. This was war, but in khakis and homeowner's insurance. I calmly backed my car into the driveway, directly behind her SUV, blocking it incompletely. I made sure there was no way out unless she wanted to go all fast and furious and jump the curb, which, knowing Karen, wasn't entirely off the table. Then I took out a sticky note. Not just any sticky note, lime green, scented, shaped like a flower. The most passive-aggressive of all office supplies. I wrote, "Hi Karen. Since you've made yourself comfortable in my driveway, I've made myself comfortable parking behind you. Let me know when you're ready to talk like an adult. Michael." I stuck it to her driver's side window with surgical precision, then went inside, made some popcorn, and settled in for what I knew would be a show-stopping performance. Roughly 2 hours later, I heard it, the knock of doom. No doorbell. Just loud, angry pounding, like she was trying to summon a demon. I opened the door to find Karen standing there, red-faced, hair frizzing, gripping her phone like it was a sword forged in entitlement. "You can't block me, she screeched. "That's illegal." I leaned against the doorframe, sipping my lemonade like I had all the time in the world. "Is it?" I said with a raised brow. "Because I'm pretty sure what you're doing, trespassing on private property every other day, is also illegal." Karen's jaw dropped open like a malfunctioning puppet. "I told you, this is an easement. It's not even your driveway." I gave her a big OL smile and pulled out my phone. Like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat, I opened my city zoning department email, still bookmarked under Karen Evidence. According to the city, it's private property. Right here in writing. Want me to forward it? Or should I show the police when they get here? Karen's expression did an entire emotional ballet in 5 seconds. Shock, fury, denial, and finally, that delicious flicker of panic. "You're being unreasonable," she hissed. "I just needed a place to park. And I just needed my driveway," I said with a shrug. "Funny how that works." She turned around and stomped off, muttering something about HOA complaints and power-tripping neighbors. I waved and called out, "Don't forget your note." And just like that, Karen met the wall of consequences she'd been speeding toward in her leather-seated chariot of delusion. I didn't call the cops. I didn't yell. I didn't key her car or flatten a tire. though Martha offered. I just used her own arrogance against her, with receipts and legally sourced city zoning facts. Because here's the thing. When someone like Karen keeps pushing, eventually she runs out of driveway. And when that happens, you park behind her, smile sweetly, and let her honk all she wants. If Karen's SUV were a person, it would be the kind who cuts in line at the airport and then complains about security being too slow. And on this fateful morning, her car didn't just cross the line. It did donuts on it while blaring ABBA. It was a Monday, a new week, a new start. I stepped outside with my travel mug of coffee, took a deep breath, and there it was, the final offense. Karen had parked diagonally across the entire driveway, managing to take up both our spots, the strip of grass, and somehow, all my remaining patience. It was a level of precision entitlement that could only be described as deliberate. There was no note.
No knock.
No, hey, just 5 minutes. Just silence. Like she knew she had declared war and dropped the SUV like a bomb. Lena peeked out and gasped. She didn't. Oh, she did. I replied, already pulling out my phone. Now, I'd like to say I acted out of logic and justice, but the truth? I was thrilled. I'd been playing defense for weeks.
And now?
It was time to call in the cavalry. Hi, yes, I said into the phone, doing my best to sound like a calm citizen and not someone holding back maniacal laughter. I have a vehicle trespassing on my private property. Can I get a tow truck? The dispatcher was polite. Said someone would be there within the hour. So I grabbed a lawn chair, set it up at the edge of the yard, and sipped my coffee like a man about to watch karma unfold in high definition. 45 minutes later, the tow truck arrived, big and rumbling and beautiful like a knight in hydraulic armor. The driver, a stocky guy named Mitch, nodded at me. That the one? He asked. I pointed like a general surveying the battlefield. Oh yeah. He got to work, chains, levers, the whole glorious process. I filmed discreetly from the porch, not for social media, yet, but just in case Karen tried to lie her way out of it later. And then, like clockwork, the front door slammed open. Karen burst out like she was auditioning for a soap opera titled, As the Driveway Turns. Hair in chaos, slippers flapping, arms flailing like she was signaling an aircraft. What are you doing? You can't tow my car. Mitch didn't even flinch. Ma'am, this car is parked illegally on private property. The owner called it in. She spun toward me, red-faced and fuming. Michael, you can't do this. Oh, but I am doing this, I replied, holding on my phone like a magic wand. Would you like to see the email from the zoning department again? Or maybe the footage from my security cam? She tried everything, bargaining, threatening, even pleading with Mitch. I just needed 10 minutes. You've had 10 weeks, Karen, I said. Within moments, the SUV was hitched up and rolling down the street, leaving behind nothing but tire marks and the scent of burning entitlement. Karen stood there, slack-jawed, as the truck disappeared. Then she stormed back into her house without another word. But the story didn't end there. Because that security cam footage? The one where she screamed, "You're ruining my life," over a parking spot, and tried to hug the tow truck? Yeah, I may have posted it to TikTok. With the caption, "Entitled neighbor gets towed after weeks of drama. Wait for her meltdown # by Karen # neighborhood justice." Within 24 hours, it had 2.3 million views. Comments poured in. Team Michael all day. This is cinema. That tow truck driver deserves a medal. And just like that, the war went public. Karen was no longer just a neighborhood nuisance. She was internet famous, for all the wrong reasons. And me? I finally had my driveway back. But something told me, Karen wasn't done yet. You'd think after your car gets hauled off in front of the whole neighborhood, and 2.3 million strangers on TikTok, you might cool down, do some soul-searching, maybe even Google how not to be the worst. But not Karen.
Nope.
Karen went full middle school. It started subtly, like a toddler testing boundaries. One morning, I woke up to the sounds of pitbull blasting from across the street at 6:45 a.m. I peered out the window in my bathrobe, expecting to see a backyard barbecue or perhaps an early Zumba class.
Nope.
It was just Karen, in her fuzzy slippers, standing by her front door, sipping iced coffee like nothing was off while "Don't Stop the Party" rattled windows. Lena rolled over and groaned. "Is it illegal to throw a Bluetooth speaker into someone's yard?" I smiled grimly. Not yet. But let's keep the option open. The next day, the music was louder. Different genre.
Country.
Not the good kind either. The overly twangy kind that sounds like your uncle wrote it after 3 beers and a divorce. Clearly, this was a declaration. But things escalated the morning after that. I opened the door to grab the newspaper and stopped dead in my tracks. There, at the end of the driveway, was a mountain of garbage bags, 3, maybe 4, overflowing with junk. Plastic containers, greasy pizza boxes, what looked like an old broken chair, and worst of all, a used litter box. Taped to one of the bags, fluttering gently in the breeze, was a handwritten note in loopy cursive. "If you don't like sharing, here's all your space back. You're welcome. Karen." I blinked.
Twice.
Lena came out with her coffee, looked at the mess, and just whispered, "This woman needs therapy. And a raccoon repellent." Now, a lesser man might have screamed, might have hurled the trash back with a running start.
But not me.
No, sir, because I was done playing checkers. I was playing chess. First, I snapped photos from every angle. Timestamped, geotagged, the whole shebang. Then I checked the security cam footage and yep, there she was at 2:11 a.m. dragging bags across the street like some trash panda in yoga pants. I dragged the bags right back across the road, placing them neatly along her curb like little bundles of shame. Even found a Sharpie and wrote, "Return to sender" on one of them. Real classy. Then I saved the video and added it to my growing collection. The Karen Chronicles. At this point, my phone gallery looked like a legal exhibit at a neighborhood trial. A few hours later, I spotted Karen peeking through her blinds like a villain in a sitcom. She saw her garbage back in front of her house. She saw the Sharpie note. She slammed the blinds shut so fast, I thought she broke them. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. No, Karen was the kind of person who doesn't back off when cornered. She doubles down. This wasn't about parking anymore. It was about pride, ego, revenge, and probably some unresolved trauma involving a HOA newsletter. Still, I wasn't rattled. I had video. I had witnesses. I had Lena and Martha and half the neighborhood ready to testify under oath if needed. And if this became a legal brawl, let's just say, my driveway wasn't the only thing she'd lose. There's a certain type of silence in suburbia that feels ominous. Not peaceful, ominous. The kind that hangs in the air right before the neighbor with too many wind chimes does something unhinged. And in my case, that silence came 2 days after I returned Karen's garbage pile with a sharp assigned, "Return to sender" flourish. So when I opened the door that afternoon and saw a police cruiser parked in front of my house, I didn't panic. I didn't even blink. I just muttered, "Here we go," and poured myself a fresh cup of coffee. Officer Daniels stepped out, mid-40s, calm demeanor, the kind of guy who's seen it all and really just wants to make it home before dinner. Behind him,
Karen.
full makeup, dramatic scarf, in 78-degree weather, and the smug expression of someone who thought they were finally about to win. She lingered behind the cruiser, arms crossed like she was being interviewed on Dateline. "Good afternoon," Officer Daniels said with a polite nod. "Mind if we talk?" "Of course not," I replied, motioning toward the porch. "Karen, would you like a seat or just prefer the performance space?" Karen narrowed her eyes, but said nothing. The officer cleared his throat. "Your neighbor here says you've been harassing her, that you've blocked her car, dumped garbage on her property, and created a hostile environment." I choked on my coffee. "I'm sorry, I dumped garbage on her property?" Karen stepped forward, voice trembling with Oscar-level conviction. "I just don't feel safe anymore. He's been so aggressive since I parked in his driveway one time. One time. Tell that to the sticky notes, the videos, and the tow truck driver named Mitch who now follows me on TikTok." I didn't yell, didn't raise my voice. Instead, I smiled and said, "Officer, I'm really glad you're here. I've been documenting everything. And I meant everything. I pulled out my phone like it was a sword forged from petty justice and opened the gallery I lovingly called Karen Files. Photos of her SUV in my driveway, dated and time-stamped. Screenshots of the city zoning email confirming my private property. Footage of her dragging garbage bags across the street at 2:11 a.m. like a raccoon on a mission. Audio of her yelling, "You can't tow my car, Michael," like it was her personal catchphrase. Officer Daniels scrolled silently for a full 2 minutes. He didn't nod, didn't smile, just scrolled. Then he turned to Karen. "Ma'am, I see no evidence of harassment here. In fact, from these videos and emails, it appears you've trespassed on Mr. Anderson's property repeatedly and illegally dumped garbage on it." Karen's face fell like a failed souffle. What?
No.
I was just making a point. He's been so rude to me. Being rude isn't illegal, the officer replied. Trespassing and illegal dumping? Those are. He turned back to me. "Mr. Anderson, would you like to file an official report?" Now, I could have ended it right there. Let her stew in embarrassment. But I was done giving Karen free passes. She had poked the bear, blocked the bear's mother, and then tried to have the bear arrested. "I would," I said calmly. "I'd like to press charges for trespassing and illegal dumping." Karen's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I'm very serious," I replied. "But I can add a smiley face if it helps." Officer Daniels handed me a clipboard. "We'll document it today. And ma'am," he turned back to Karen, "I suggest you avoid stepping on his property again. Next time it could mean fines. Or worse." Karen looked like she might cry. Not from guilt, from disbelief that the world wasn't bending to her will anymore. She stormed off, scarf flapping like a surrender flag in the wind. As the cruiser drove off and Lena peeked through the blinds, I raised my mug to her and said, "The law has spoken." And just like that, Karen's carefully crafted facade of misunderstood victim came crashing down. Because you can fake tears. You can fake politeness. But when the receipts are real and the camera's rolling, the truth parks itself right at your curb. If Karen's meltdown in front of Officer Daniels was the fall of her empire, then what happened next was the suburban revolution. And let me tell you, when a quiet neighborhood turns on you, it doesn't look like pitchforks and torches. It looks like committee meetings and laminated signs. You see, after the police visit and the failed "I'm a victim" routine, Karen didn't retreat with dignity. Oh no. She doubled down. The very next morning, she launched what I now refer to as the pity parade. She went door to door, literally, armed with a clipboard, some freshly baked banana bread, probably store-bought, and a dramatic story about how Michael Anderson had harassed a single mom and abused his property rights. By the time she got to Julia and Tom's place 3 doors down, she was in full theatrical mode. "He's turning this neighborhood into a surveillance state," Karen reportedly said, clutching her scarf like it was a pearl necklace. "He even had my car towed, can you believe that? All over a driveway." What happened to compassion? To community? Julia, bless her, listened politely and then shut it all down with the force of 10 HOA bylaws. "Karen," she said, folding her arms, "you let your dog poop in our flower bed and didn't clean it up for 6 months. And don't think I forgot the time you stuffed your takeout containers into our trash can the day before pickup." Karen blinked. That's not the point." "It kinda is," Julia replied, then closed the door without another word. Word spread fast after that. Turns out, Karen had made enemies on every block without even trying. She'd blocked driveways, let her cat claw patio furniture, dumped garbage, and once even used someone's outdoor hose without asking because, and I quote, "I thought it was a community spigot." Community spigot. Let that sink in. Later that week, something beautiful happened. Something I didn't orchestrate. The neighborhood met without her. Tom knocked on my door that Saturday with a clipboard of his own. "We're calling it a concerned neighbors gathering. Not a witch hunt," he added with a wink. At the meeting, held in Julia's backyard under a string of fairy lights and fueled by lemonade and mild outrage, We shared stories. And not just about Karen's parking violations, about years of petty tyranny. It was like therapy, but with cookies. By the end, 3 community decisions were made. No more roaming pets. A motion was passed to report any unleashed animals directly to animal control. Karen's dog, Duchess, who was more tyrant than terrier, would now be on a leash or in a pamphlet. Driveway ownership signs. We ordered small, tasteful plaques to place at the start of our driveways that read, "Private drive, residents only." Just in case someone forgot how property works. Petition to the City Council. Julia drafted a formal letter to the local neighborhood oversight committee requesting regular monitoring of ongoing property boundary disputes and recurring nuisance behavior. That was the official language. The unofficial message? Keep an eye on Karen. For once, it wasn't just me versus Karen. It was us, a whole block of quiet, polite, lawn-loving Americans, finally saying, "Enough." And while Karen stayed holed up behind her blinds, probably fuming into another oversized tumbler of non-fat oat milk righteousness, we took back our street. Because in the end, it wasn't just about driveways or trash or cupcake emergencies.
It was about respect.
About boundaries. And about not letting one woman in yoga pants and delusions of grandeur turn an entire zip code into her kingdom. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind of morning that makes you believe the universe still has a sense of humor. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and for once, the only thing parked in my driveway was my own car. I was sipping coffee on the porch, letting the peace settle in, when I heard it. The low, mechanical hum. The beeping as it reversed. The majestic sight of a moving truck rolling up to Karen Reynolds' house. At first, I thought it might be furniture delivery. But then came the boxes. The sofa. The infamous yoga ball that had never once touched a gym floor. And finally, Karen herself, directing 2 disgruntled movers while wearing oversized sunglasses and the bitter expression of a dictator being exiled from her tiny kingdom. I choked on my coffee. "Lena," I called inside, "you may want to grab the good camera." Within minutes, word had spread like wildfire. Julia came outside holding a lawn chair. Tom brought celebratory donuts. Even Martha shuffled over from her senior aerobics class, sunglasses on, cane in hand, and sass in full force. We didn't cheer, not out loud. We're suburbanites, not animals. But we smiled. Oh, we smiled. Karen barely looked at us. Whether it was embarrassment, denial, or an overdose of oat milk bitterness, she avoided eye contact like it might turn her to stone. The movers packed up the last of her houseplants. May they find peace. And within an hour, the truck door slammed shut. The engine rumbled. And just like that, Karen was gone. No grand speech. No handwritten notes taped to our doors. Just the exhaust trail of a rain that had lasted far too long.
And me?
Well, I couldn't resist. I went inside, grabbed a stick of sidewalk chalk, the fat, pastel kind kids use, and walked to the edge of my driveway. Carefully, dramatically, I scrawled in big, bold letters. Vacancy. No Karens allowed. It wasn't art. It wasn't subtle.
But it was honest.
And it felt damn good. Lena came outside laughing, phone in hand. "You're going viral again." "Good," I said. Let her haunt Pinterest boards instead of our street. That evening, our block did something we hadn't done in months. We gathered.
Not to vent.
Not to plan petitions. But to celebrate. Lena baked cookies. Martha brought her famous apple cinnamon muffins, fresh out of the oven and spiced with a sweet, sweet taste of justice. Julia made a sign that said, "Rest in peace, community peace." Even Tom brought wine, which may or may not have been from his emergency stash labeled Karen's parking days. We toasted.
We laughed.
We shared stories of her bizarre HOA complaints, her dog's rogue poop adventures, and her legendary meltdown with the tow truck driver. But mostly, we breathed. Because peace had returned to our street. And as I stood there, watching Martha laugh with Julia, Lena curled up in her chair sipping wine, and the whole neighborhood united in light and laughter, I realized something. Dealing with someone like Karen takes 3 things. Patience. The kind that keeps you from snapping after the third cupcake excuse.
Proof.
Because nothing speaks louder than a timestamped video and a zoning email. And last but not least, a little bit of salty humor. The kind that reminds people you're not cruel, just creative. So if you ever find yourself facing a Karen in the wild, whether she's in your driveway, your office, or your group chat, remember this. You don't need to stoop to their level. Just document the chaos. Stand your ground. And when the time is right, write it all out in chalk for the whole neighborhood to see. Because sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes it wears cargo shorts and drinks lemonade on the porch. And sometimes it comes with muffins,